Your dog turns in three tight circles before lying down on a flat carpeted floor. No grass underneath, no danger nearby. Nothing to flatten, and nothing to check. You've watched this 1,000 times and barely registered it as strange. But the real answer is stranger than a habit. It's a message sent from an animal that stopped existing 11,000 years ago, still running quietly in the body curled up at your feet. Every dog you have ever owned is, underneath the fur and the food bowl and the leash, a wolf with the edges filed off. Not fully a wolf, not just a pet. Something caught halfway through a transformation that started around a fire pit in Ice Age Siberia, long before anyone wrote anything down. And the strange little things your dog does every day are not random glitches in an animal that doesn't know any better. They are fossils, behavioral fossils preserved not in rock, but in muscle and instinct carried forward through thousands of generations of an animal that chose you before you ever chose it. You have probably never thought of your dog as a historical record. You think of it as a personality, a little stubborn, a little clingy, a little obsessed with the mail carrier. But personality is the surface layer. Underneath it is a script written by natural selection over tens of thousands of years, and your dog is performing that script every single day in your kitchen, on your couch, in the 10 seconds before it lies down for a nap. None of it is new behavior. All of it is inherited behavior, wearing a modern costume. Start with the circling, since it's the easiest to explain and the hardest to unlearn. Wild canids don't get handed a place to sleep. They build one. Turning in tight circles, presses down tall grass, clears away brush, and checks the ground beneath for anything sharp, wet, or alive. A wolf circling before it beds down is doing basic maintenance on a mattress made of dirt and stems. Your dog has a memory foam bed by the radiator. It circles anyway, because the behavior outlived the reason for it by several thousand years. Then there's the head tilt. You talk to your dog in that slightly higher voice you use for no one else, and its head cocks to one side like a satellite dish adjusting for signal. For a long time, people assumed this was just cuteness or confusion, but researchers studying canine hearing found something more specific going on. A dog's long snout partially blocks its ability to pinpoint exactly where a sound is coming from. Tilting the head shifts the position of the ears and improves that localization while also opening up a clearer view of your mouth and eyes, which is where most of the actual meaning lives. Your dog isn't confused when it tilts its head. It's listening with its whole face. Why does a wagging tail sometimes feel like good news and sometimes feel like a warning? This one surprised even the scientists studying it. Giorgio Vagliortigara, a neuroscientist at the University of Trento, ran experiments showing that dogs wag with more motion toward the right side of their body when they see something they want, like their owner walking through the door, and more toward the left when they see something that makes them uneasy, like an unfamiliar, dominant dog. That asymmetry lines up with brain lateralization, the same kind of left brain, right brain specialization found in humans. The right hemisphere, wired to detect threat, controls the left side of the body. The tail isn't only an emotional gauge you can read from across the room. It's a live readout of which half of the brain just switched on. Now think about the look your dog gives you when you come home to a chewed shoe. The ears go back, the eyes go wide and soft, the tail drops low. It looks, unmistakably, like guilt. Alexandra Horowitz, who runs the dog cognition lab at Barnard College, tested this directly. She set up scenarios where owners were told their dog had misbehaved, whether or not it actually had, and then asked the owners to scold the dog. The so-called guilty look showed up most strongly not when the dog had actually done something wrong, but when the owner acted upset, regardless of what really happened. Your dog isn't confessing to a crime when it slinks toward you like that. It's reading your body language and bracing for a reaction it has learned through repetition to expect. What looks like a moral emotion is really a survival skill, tuned entirely to you specifically and to no one else. Why does your dog sniff another dog for what feels like an uncomfortably long time? Because that spot functions like an information booth. Concentrated scent glands there produce a signature unique to each animal, carrying details on sex, health, mood, even reproductive status all at once. What looks rude to you is, to a dog, closer to reading someone's entire profile in a single motion. Dogs don't need small talk to figure out who they're dealing with. They need one good sniff and the whole conversation is already finished. And what about the grass eating? For decades, the working assumption was that dogs eat grass to make themselves vomit when something feels wrong internally. But most dogs that eat grass never throw up afterward, and most show no signs of illness before or after doing it. A wider explanation has taken hold instead. Eating vegetation may simply be leftover behavior from an omnivorous ancestor that scavenged whatever was edible and available, plant matter included, long before regular meals existed. Sometimes the explanation for a strange behavior isn't a hidden crisis you need to solve. Sometimes it's just an old habit with nowhere left to go, harmless and inherited. Digging a hole in a backyard with nothing buried and it looks pointless from where you're standing. But a wolf digging into cool earth on a hot day is regulating its own body temperature. Since wolves don't sweat the way you do, only through their paw pads and through panting, a wolf digging to bury food is protecting a meal from scavengers who might steal it before the next hunt happens. Your dog has a bowl refilled twice a day and a climate controlled house with air conditioning. It digs anyway in soil that has never once been scarce or dangerous because 11,000 years is not nearly enough time to erase 40 million years of canine evolution. What about the howling? The one that starts the second a siren passes outside. To you, it sounds like distress or noise for the sake of noise. To a wolf's brain, still running underneath the domestication, a long, rising tone at a distance sounds exactly like a member of the pack calling out. Wolves howl to announce location across distances a bark could never cover, to pull scattered members back together, and to warn rival packs where a territory begins. Your dog has no territory to defend and no scattered pack to gather. The siren just happens to sit inside the same pitch range as a howl, and something ancient answers back before your dog has any say in the matter. Then there's the socks, the dead bird on the porch, the chewed up toy dropped directly in your lap like an offering. Wolves that hunt in a group don't eat alone in the field. They carry food back, sometimes regurgitated, sometimes whole, to feed pups and other pack members who stayed behind at the den. Bringing something back and presenting it isn't random destruction. It's an inherited version of provisioning, redirected at you because your dog has quietly filed you under pack, whether or not you ever agreed to the arrangement. Why does your dog lean its full weight against your leg while you're just standing at the counter doing nothing in particular? It isn't losing its balance. Wolf pups and adult pack members press against each other for warmth in cold dens, for reassurance during tense moments, and simply to confirm, through touch, that the group is still intact. Body contact among canids is a running status check, a way of feeling for the pack without needing to look at it. Your dog leaning into your leg isn't asking for anything from you. It's confirming something to itself, the same way it would with another wolf, using you as the nearest and most trusted body in the room. And the zoomies, the sudden explosion of sprinting in tight loops around the living room for no visible reason, usually right after a bath or right before bed. Researchers who study behavior call these frenetic random activity periods, and they tend to show up when built-up energy or built-up stress needs somewhere to go, and there's no obvious outlet for it. A wolf pup released from a stressful moment, or flooded with pent-up energy after a long stretch of stillness, will do almost exactly the same thing, tearing across open ground in bursts before collapsing. Your dog doesn't need a reason to run in circles at 9 at night. It needs a release valve, and running is the oldest one it has. Here's where all of this stops looking like a list of quirks and starts looking like one single story. In 2015, a research team led by Miho Nagasawa and Takafumi Kikusui in Japan measured oxytocin, the hormone tied to bonding, trust, and attachment, in both dogs and their owners after sustained eye contact. Levels rose in both, not just in the human half of the pair, in the dog too. Wolves don't hold prolonged eye contact with humans. In wolf body language, direct staring reads as a challenge, something to be avoided or answered with aggression. Dogs do it constantly, and it triggers the exact same chemical loop that bonds a mother to an infant. Somewhere in the last several thousand years, an animal that used to treat your gaze as a threat rewired itself to seek that gaze out instead, and your own body rewired itself right back to meet it, which raises the actual question sitting underneath every behavior on this list. Why would a wolf, an animal built for a life that never needed you, choose to entangle its biology with yours this completely? In the 1950s, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev ran an experiment that took decades for anyone to fully understand. Working with silver foxes at a research institute outside Novosibirsk, he bred only the calmest, least aggressive animals from each generation, selecting purely for tameness and nothing else. Not appearance, not size, not anything visible. Within a handful of generations, without selecting for a single physical trait, the foxes started showing floppy ears, curled tails, patches of white fur, shortened snouts, and a tendency to whine and wag and actively seek out human attention, like puppies that never finished growing up. Belyaev had shown, almost by accident, that breeding an animal for friendliness drags an entire cluster of physical and behavioral traits along with it, because they share overlapping genetics tied to stress hormones and developmental timing. The tamer foxes weren't just calmer. Their bodies produced lower levels of stress hormones, their adrenal glands developed differently, and their brains stayed in a kind of extended puppyhood well into adulthood, never fully hardening into the wary, reactive wiring of a wild fox. Dogs almost certainly went through something similar, not in a controlled lab, but around early human campsites, where the calmest, least fearful wolves got the easiest access to scraps and passed that calmness on to their pups, generation after generation, without a single human ever intending to design a companion animal. No one bred the first dog on purpose. The dog bred itself into existence by tolerating you. Think about what that means for the shape of your own daily life. Most of human history was lived shoulder to shoulder with other people, in bands and villages where solitude was rare and usually dangerous. Today, a growing number of people live alone, work alone, and go entire days without meaningful physical contact with another living thing. Into that gap steps an animal that was quite literally bred over thousands of years to want nothing more than to be near you, to read your face, to synchronize its nervous system with yours through eye contact and touch. Your dog is not a replacement for human connection, but it is one of the last remaining relationships in modern life still running on the same ancient hardware humans and their closest companions have always used to bond, unmediated by a screen, unscheduled by a calendar, requiring nothing from you except presence. That might be part of why the bond feels so uncomplicated compared to almost everything else in your life. Every other relationship you manage involves negotiation, expectation, and the constant low-grade work of being understood correctly. Your dog was shaped generation after generation to skip all of that and go straight to attachment. It was built quite deliberately by evolution to be exactly that simple. So the circling, the tilting, the sniffing, the digging, the howling at a passing siren, the socks dropped in your lap, the leaning, the zoomies, the eye contact that floods both your brains with the same bonding chemical at the same time, none of it is background noise from an animal that simply doesn't know better. It's a translation problem, one that's been slowly solving itself for 11,000 years. Your dog is fluent in the language of an ancestor that hunted in a pack, slept in the open, and never once had a name. You're fluent in the language of central heating and work schedules and small talk at the front door. Somewhere in the gap, without either species holding a meeting about it, a bridge got built one behavior at a time, until a wolf learned to hold your gaze on purpose and a human learned to read a wagging tail as a feeling instead of a reflex. None of this makes the behaviors any less strange to watch. It just changes what you're watching them for. The circling isn't a quirk to train out. The head tilt isn't a trick for attention. The eye contact isn't neediness. Each one is a small, working piece of an ancient survival system that happened to find a second life on your living room floor, still doing its job long after the world that built it disappeared. Wolves don't exist anymore in the shape that gave rise to your dog. That specific animal, the one that first tolerated a human campfire, is gone. Extinct in every sense except one. It survives, whole, inside the body asleep on your couch right now. You watch your dog turn in 3 tight circles on a bed it never needed to build. And now, when you see it happen, you're not watching a habit anymore. You're watching an 11,000-year-old conversation still being spoken out loud, one strange little behavior at a time.